I love beautiful pictures of animals surrounded by their natural habitats. It's exhilarating to see idyllic environments and the animals so amazingly well adapted to live in them. It's also comforting to know those places still exist, despite what we're doing to the planet. But there's a danger in that exhilaration and comfort. These animals appear to live in a world so separate from our own, and at the same time, we might be lulled into thinking that this other world and these habitats are safe. Cara Maria's paintings take a very different approach to representing animals. Her work features extinct, endangered, and invasive species, but they all float in abstract worlds, popping with color and soaked in the impact of humans on their lives. Cara's work is captivating. It's also an alarm sounding about the dire threat that Earth's biodiversity faces in the age of humans. Her paintings of animals bring the biodiversity crisis to our front doorstep and spur us to think about how our actions are at the root of the ecologically devastating changes happening around the world. I'm John Fiege, and this episode of Chrysalis is part of the Chrysalis Artist Series. Cara Maria is based in San Francisco, and her work is held in the permanent collections of the Berkeley Art Museum, the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, and the San Jose Museum of Art, among others. She's been awarded a number of artist residencies, including the Ecology Artist in Residence program at the San Francisco Recycling and Transfer Center, which we talk about in this episode. Here is Cara Maria. Well, much of your recent work is focused on species extinction and biodiversity loss. You had a show in 2022 entitled Precious and Precarious, Life on the Edge of Extinction, and another in 2021 called Regarding Extinction. And they're all a part of your Endangered Animals series. I've read that Elizabeth Kolbert's book, The Sixth Extinction, was a big inspiration for this work, in addition to an artist residency you did called Ecology, located at the San Francisco Recycling and Transfer Center, and using materials gleaned from the San Francisco city dump. Can you talk a bit about your path to this engagement with the extinction crisis?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, both of those things are true. and
Good.
Yeah, I read Elizabeth Kolbert's book when it came out in, I believe it was 2014. And so I had already been thinking a lot about the environmental situation as it was, like, not that it wasn't in the news ever before, but I think at that point things were starting to really heat up with the dialogue just in general, like for public consumption about that,
right,
in my perception. And so when I read her book, what really struck me was the format of the book. I mean, the content as well, the idea that we're engaged in the sixth mass extinction on the planet and that the driving force behind that is human activity. But she also organized her book in this way that each chapter focuses on a different animal, a specific animal that is either endangered or extinct or somewhere in between those 2 points.
Right.
And she traveled all over and met with people and really went in depth about those particular animals. And so it just struck me that that would be an interesting way to approach a series of paintings as well, just focusing on one animal in each painting, because, and she did this with her book as well, it just shows the breadth and depth of the problem that we have, which is, it's not just birds and it's not just amphibians, it's not just insects, it's everything. Yeah, all at once, like the entire ecosystem. I don't want to say it's totally collapsing because that is not exactly true, but it's definitely shifting. And there's, just listening daily to like NPR, you're going to get basically parts of that story, because it's pretty much impossible to ignore right now. So her book had a big influence on me that way. And then at the same time, from 2014 into 2015, I had the residency at Ecology, which, as you said, is the San Francisco dump. So it's actually a waste transfer station where all of the garbage and recycling and compostables from the city of San Francisco go. And they have this fantastic artist in residence program where
Super cool.
It's really cool. Like you stay there for 4 months and they give you a hard hat and a shopping cart, and you go into the dump and you scavenge all of your art materials. And they have a studio on site. And so you make work for 4 months and then you have a show there. And it's really great. And it actually, many things start in the Bay Area. And that is one of the ideas that started here. And now there are programs in other cities as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. And I was curious if you've kind of continued that that technique of finding kind of reclaimed or recycled materials to use in your work, like after that residency.
Actually, that's a really good question, because one of the things you get after doing the residency, like they train you how to scavenge so that you don't get run over by a bulldozer or whatever. Yeah, because literally, important, because you're in this part of the facility where it's not where the garbage trucks go. It's where people go and construction crews go, and anyone who wants to drive a truck full of something that they want to throw away goes into this gigantic warehouse place. And you have about 20 minutes or so before a bulldozer comes and like bulldozes it into the giant steaming pile of trash.
Wow.
And only artists are allowed to scavenge for the materials. So the point being, I am allowed to still go back there and scavenge. Like they let you keep your hard hat and everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Lifetime membership.
Right, exactly. The thing is, though, I got so many art supplies the first time around that I'm still using paint that I found.
No way.
Then, yeah. I mean,
these are like specifically art supplies.
This is not art supplies.
This is not things that you're using as art supplies.
No, it's like actual paint, because, people take classes or whatever, and then they, luckily there's this place that you can bring your used art supplies, which is at the dump. So there's actual literal like artist quality paint there. But of course, that's not, when I was at the dump, that was all I used, because that's the idea of the residency. But I don't only use that paint now. I buy other paint and use new supplies and everything. But I haven't gone back to scavenge for more, because I still have a supply of what I got there the first time. So yeah. And I think eventually I probably will go back, just because it's like a really interesting thing to do. And I think it's a good idea to recycle supplies. But the other thing is I do make paintings and I do buy paint, but it doesn't take that much paint to make the paintings that I make. It's weird. Like the paint lasts a really long time.
Well, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah. And then actually, on a side note, I try to be very environmentally conscious about what I do with my studio practice. And so I actually mix all my colors on watercolor blocks, which is like watercolor paper that's glued together on the edges. And I save all of those and I give them away as donations for auctions and that kind of thing. So I actually don't put paint in the garbage either.
Oh, wow. That's
once
cool.
I have it. Yeah. Or try not down the sink or anything.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And, before reading Elizabeth Colbert's book and before this residency, had you been engaging with these environmental themes at all? Or was this kind of a huge shift?
No, I had. It's just that I hadn't been focusing on the animals as a sort of, I'm going to use the word avatar, or like a symbol for the situation. So before that, I had done, so I've been painting since 1990 when I moved to California, as halfway through my undergraduate work, and I went to UC Berkeley, and I've always been sort of interested in the environment and in politics, and there's always been sort of this mix of abstraction and representation in my work, and usually the representation has something, I would say, like politically significant to me in it, and a lot of that stuff has been environmental. Like I did a whole series with smokestacks, and I've done things with like gas pumps, and I did a lot of paintings with military equipment in them, and then military equipment and birds of prey mixed together, which was probably like the first time that I started putting a lot of animals in there, but it wasn't about the animals being endangered. It was more about the symbolism of them in relation to the plains. So it kind of evolved from that. And it was really during that residency at Recology that I started thinking about the animals, because I got this idea of including animals that live and work at Recology in the paintings that I made there. So they're not endangered. They're actually super prolific animals that are like thriving at the dump. So I did like a rat and a seagull, and they feed feral cats there. And they have a falconer that brings prey birds to control the rodent population. And so it's like a very, I would say, like advanced and evolved situation at Recology.
Wow.
And they're really good. And so that's when I started putting the animals in. And then I was like, well, why not try it with endangered animals as well? So.
And that seems like two sides of the same extinction crisis coin of on the one hand, we have all these species that are dwindling rapidly and disappearing. And on the other hand, we have these species that thrive with human development, raccoons and rats and pigeons, and they're sometimes invasive, always extremely populous.
Yes.
So did that kind of, I don't know, this endangered animals series, did that kind of come out of that?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it did. Yes. And then since then, I've thought about, and I think I've even maybe I painted a bark beetle, for example, which is like one of those animals that's overly prolific and killing all the trees in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. So I have like tried sticking invasive animals in there as well, as like the flip side of extinction, really. But somehow there's just so many animals that are endangered. I don't even really need to like branch out past that, because I could never, actually
work the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, there's this novelist, Richard Powers, that wrote a book called The Overstory, which I loved. And then his next book that came out is called Bewilderment, his newest book. And in that book, there's a little boy, and the little boy attempts to draw like all the endangered animals. Like he has this drawing project. I was like, that's hilarious. That's like
that's
my
me.
project. Yeah. Because you really can't, it's like so many that you just could go on forever and you'll never get to all of them.
Right. And then there's, what's his name? Joel Sartori, who's doing the endangered, the photography of the endangered.
Yes,
animals.
They're fantastic. Yes.
And he doesn't need another project the rest of his life. Like that's going to fill it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's look more closely at some of the work. There are a few things that jump out at me immediately about the work. For folks who can't see them right now, each painting has a highly detailed representational image of a single individual of an endangered species, a whooping crane, a chimpanzee, a monarch butterfly. But rather than being in a natural habitat, they're small figures in a loud, bright, abstract, artificial world that feels like it's some kind of artistic descendant of abstract expressionism, anime, pop art. But at the same time, these small representational images of the animals feel like there may be lost figures from a Japanese landscape painting with a tiny human figure dwarfed by the natural landscape. Except here, the landscape is anything but natural in the traditional sense. Can you talk about the artistic influences of this work and how all these elements are working together?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just described it pretty exactly. Because my idea, and the reason there's only one in each painting is because, I want it to be this feeling of displacement. Like in my perception, that's basically what's happening, is that we, people, have altered the natural world so much that no matter which animal you read about, like a huge reason for the loss of population, the loss of species, is the alteration of their natural environment, or what would have been. So rather than depicting the nature or the habitat that they should have been living in, I'm sort of depicting what I perceive as like a human-made artificial environment, which is also beautiful and exciting. And, I mean, it's not all bad. Like there's amazing things and beautiful things and whatever, very engaging. But at the same time, we're losing something else. It's like a trade-off that we're making. And so I think all of the influences that you talked about with pop art and abstract expressionism are valid, because I am a painter. And I think when I started painting, I was primarily interested in abstraction. I was a big fan of Kandinsky, and color and all of that vibrancy is the reason that I started painting. And so, I'm kind of torn because I feel like the world is an amazing, wonderful place. And also, we're a special place in the greater cosmos around us. Like Earth is special, as far as we know, among the other planets that we know about, at least at this moment in time. And so I also want to think about that a little bit, like how those animals and us, life as we have it on this planet, is a little tiny speck within this greater field of, all kinds of energy, but not necessarily biological life that we've been able to detect right at this moment. So there's kind of that, like, thinking about the specifics of Earth, but also our place within the greater whole as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and one image that came to my mind was some of those super sad photographs of like the very last of an endangered species. Most recently, I'm thinking of the last black rhino, and there's this photo of the black rhino in a field by himself, and is still alive, but there's no one to mate with, and they're destined to be the last one on Earth. And I feel like your painting's kind of, luckily that's not the situation with a lot of these species yet, but the painting gives us a little preview of what that could feel like if we don't do something drastic to change course.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to get across. And also, somebody wrote this really wonderful review of one of my shows, and she was comparing them to a New Orleans funeral where
oh yeah, I think I read that the second line.
It's a funeral, but it's like there's music and dancing, and it's
celebration.
Like this celebration. So, I also think of them, for me personally, because I didn't know that much about animals before I started this series. I mean, I have cats, like I've had cats for 20 years. So I've lived up close with them and I see animals, but each time I paint one, I learn so much about them, like their bodies, what they look like really in detail. And just sort of honoring their presence, like their physical presence in this way, just for myself, like just to really understand like what this thing is that is, disappearing or being diminished in population.
Yeah, totally. Well, and this combination of abstraction and pop art with activism, it also makes me think of Keith Haring, who, channeled his pop art into AIDS activism and other political movements. What do you see as this relationship between art and activism, both in your own work, but also more broadly? Like, what do you think of? They're often in conflict, it seems, but they often seem intertwined as well.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, let me start with that. Like and I definitely think there's a lot of artists that are doing a lot more activism than I'm actually doing. So I want to acknowledge that. It's weird because my work fits in that category, but not, I'm not a social practice person. I'm not out there doing much of anything except making my work and putting it out there. So like, I definitely applaud the people who are working more overtly that way. But at the same time, ever since I started painting, almost, I just felt like it was important for me personally to like put some of my thoughts about things in the world into my work. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. And I want it to touch other people and maybe spark a conversation. And I have to say, working with the animals, it's the most successful that I've been at that, because a lot of the other subjects I was using or maybe a little bit too inflammatory or something. Like they would provoke dialogue, but not the kind I was sort of hoping for. And the animals really work because
everyone loves animals.
Everyone loves animals. They're even, all ages, like whatever. It's completely,
even
safe.
Even people doing things to destroy them and their habitat.
Right, exactly.
They still love them. They still have the stuffed animals.
Yeah, so it like really draws people in, because actually this is off topic a little bit, but even abstraction and painting, there's some people who love it and people who know more about art maybe understand it. There's a lot of people who just don't like it, like they don't understand it. It puts them off, whatever. So the animals are like the thing that pretty much universally seems to draw people in. And then I'm hoping, because of the animals I'm choosing, that if you even just, I'll use the word Google. Like if you do a search on your phone when you're standing in front of it and see the title, you're going to learn all this stuff that's, like a subtext for the painting. So I think art and activism is wonderful. I also want to say that I think art without activism is also wonderful. So I don't think it's a requirement. I do not like this idea that, it reminds me of like the Chinese Cultural Revolution or something, where like you must make art that supports like a political view. I don't feel that way. Like I think art for art's sake is completely fine.
Well, let's look at a few of the specific works. I love gray wolves, so I wanted to talk about your painting. Every murmur becomes a wave, and this painting features a gray wolf who could be on top of a mountain with stars up above, but this mountain, or what seems like the shape of a mountain, is a yellow and red ribbon shaped wave, and the stars look like splatters from a paintball gun, or these psychedelic explosions. Could you talk a bit about this piece? Where did it come from, and how did you go about constructing it?
Okay, yeah, this is a good example because so when you look at it, you can see there's a lot of blurry shapes in the background. And the way I work with paint, I'm using acrylic paint. So this would be possible to do with oil paint, but it's easier with acrylic and probably more stable in terms of lasting over time. I work with raw canvas. I don't put gesso on the canvas. And I stretch them on a stretcher bar, or have them stretched. And then I put them on the floor and I just saturate it with water. And then I use watered down acrylic paint to sort of stain paint. And the precedent for this would be like Helen Frankenthaler, Morris Louis, like those abstract expressionists who used stain painting as a technique. So I wanted to get that soft focus in the background so that it feels like depth. So I do that layer first, and then I put a clear varnish over that. And then I paint the rest of the painting on top of it. And so the rest of the painting, there are splatters that I'll make. There's like smudges and different techniques. Some of that you can't tell in the image online, but there's some areas where the paint is like really, really thick because I put like gobs of paint on there and then put either another canvas or a piece of paper over the top and like pull the paint off. Which is it's called decalcomania, and it was Max Ernst, one of the surrealists, sort of was using that technique. And it's also a little bit reminiscent of printmaking, where you're like transferring sort of fluid from like one surface to another, pigment from one surface to another. And then there's all these other shapes that are gleaned from, I collect comic books, which I did not when I was a kid, but I do now. I'm especially fond of vintage X-Men comics.
Oh, wow.
I like anything that has I don't really read the stories, but I love anything that has sort of this depiction of natural forces. So like explosions and wind and whatever. And all of that comes out of Japanese woodblock printing, the tradition. So that led to manga, which led to Western comic books. So this idea of like the graphic depiction of natural forces, I'm really interested in those. So I borrow a lot from that. And then the other shapes, I've just, for a long time been interested in painting explosions. So whether a lot of them are just, I invent them, I cut them out of paper. That might help explain the technique. So I'll cut them out of a sheet of paper and then put them up on my canvas and place them where I want, and then trace that and then paint them in. So there's a stencil in the sense that I've cut it out of paper, but they're hand painted. They're not like, it's not Frisket or something like that. Like I'm actually painting all of those edges myself. So the advantage of that, I mean, it's a little time consuming, but it doesn't have all the ridges and stuff. Like they have this really interesting, and when you get up on them, you can see that it's a hand painted edge, not something that was done with a masking technique. So there's this kind of weird interplay between like the hand and smoothness, or an attempt at smoothness, because you can see there's not a lot of brushwork in most of my paintings except in the animals themselves. Every once in a while there will be, but most of the brushwork I try to kind of hide it, but it is still in there if you see the piece in person. So that's how I build the paintings, actually. So from usually from back to front, although sometimes I have to go back and like stick things behind other things as well.
Oh, that's super cool. Oh, that's amazing. And how about the figures? I've read somewhere somebody described them as Audubon-esque or Audubon-like.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Audubon. I know Audubon's canceled. I get it. I understand that. But like, also,
who isn't?
Yeah, he was an amazing painter. I was actually had some work in a show that was about Audubon, and they put my paintings next to his, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting and flattering. Oh, wow. Anyway, he was painting more from observation of the actual thing, which is part of people's problem with him, because he was like killing the birds that he was painting in order to make the paintings of them. I'm working from found photographs for the most part. Sometimes they're my own photographs, and a lot of composite photos. So in other words, taking the feet from one animal and making them kind of like work for the painting in the way that I want it to. And I put them in. Sometimes I'll know from the beginning which animal I'm going to want, but usually the painting's about, say, 2/3 of the way done. And then I'm like, all right, it's time to figure out what animal is going to go in here. And I add them in a way that I hope it'll be enough that they're kind of like a focal point formally for the whole rest of the painting, sort of a way to animate the rest of, not like the painting needs more animation, but somehow like adding something, especially animals that have eyes, visible. It's sort of like a focal point. And then I wear jeweler's glasses and get up really close with tiny brushes and just spend half of forever trying to get them to look as just real as I can, as three-dimensional. You notice everything else is kind of flat looking. So they're sort of the three-dimensional element, which is, something else that paint is really good at, like replicating three-dimensionality on a two-dimensional surface. So that's my little chance to do that. And also, it's like a learning experience for me, because I was not trained as a realist painter. I mean, I did graduate from UC Berkeley with an art degree and then an MFA later, but there wasn't any teaching of how to do this kind of painting. So this is something that I've sort of taught myself, and probably I'm doing it all wrong, but somehow the end result comes out in this way that looks, works for me. So, so that's how they get in there.
So when you're deciding on the animal, are you talking about what particular individual or photograph you're going to use, or are you talking about you haven't even decided on the species yet when you've created the background?
Yeah, sometimes I haven't even decided.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, so what I try to do is, again, back to Elizabeth Kolbert and her book, like if the last animal I painted was a mammal, the next one, I want it to be something else. Like I try to sort of rotate through the different kinds of animals.
Right.
And then also sort of color-wise and, texture-wise and everything else. And also posture-wise, like how is it going to fit in? Like this wolf, I just thought it was really funny that it would be like sort of perched up on that shape as if it was like the top of a mountain or something.
Yeah.
Like a rock or whatever. So sometimes I'm looking for posture, actually. So there's a bunch of variables, but conceptually, the goal is to just give a rounded view of the situation. So in other words, get to like the different kinds of species. That's why there's that much variety.
Oh, that's cool. Well, another piece I'd love to hear more about is An Exercise in Freedom, which features a whooping crane. And in most of your pieces in this series, the animals are small compared to their surroundings, but with the whooping crane, it's also camouflaged and very hard to see, particularly on the internet. And finding the whooping crane is a lot like trying to find Waldo in a sense, with Where's Waldo. And there are also a bunch of cars painted in black and white in the background, which is less colorful and more representational than many of your other pieces in terms of the backgrounds. Can you tell me a bit about this piece and the importance of the animal disappearing into the human-induced noise of the world and what's going on with the cars?
Yeah, good. Very good observation. So this painting is actually an update of an older painting. So I made a painting in 2006 that had the traffic in it. And then I decided in 2018 that this one would work really well for my new series with the endangered animals. So the traffic is a remnant of the painting that was there before.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the explosive shapes and that dotted yellow line and the whooping crane and probably a few other details were part of the 2018 update of the painting. So it is like significantly different because there aren't any other ones that have this much. Some of them have like maybe a single element, like there's a couple that have missiles in them. One of them has like specifically a North Korean missile. One of them has like a nuclear submarine. That sometimes I do put other elements, but this is really a lot of like otherness, like all that traffic. But that's traffic from 2006.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was thinking about the Bay Bridge actually, and like just traffic, like sitting in traffic and looking out the rear view mirror and seeing like these cars sort of piled up behind you. And then the idea that like there are birds like that, fly through that space in the bay. And so just like the birds sort of crossing, what would be like a freeway or some other, human traffic situation. That's all. And so, so that one is, in relation to everything else that's going on, it is especially hidden. Some of the other ones are a little more obvious, but I think it gets extra hidden because the traffic is fairly three-dimensionally rendered.
Right.
And so
the black and white, I think, too.
And the black and white. Yeah, exactly.
And so did you take the actual canvas from 2006 and add to it? So the 2006 painting no longer exists.
Right.
It's now a new painting.
Right.
So you didn't duplicate it and then
No.
Oh wow, I like that. That's bold.
I do
bold.
that. I mean, again, recycling, right? Like,
right.
I don't always do it. Like, I do let paintings sit around, even if nobody has bought them or whatever. Like, I have storage with a lot of paintings, but sometimes there's one where I'm like, this one would really work as an update. Like, I could really do something with this. So that's why I did that.
Oh, that's super cool. Well, looking at all these pieces, they feel to me like part elegy for disappearing life around the planet, but also part loud wake-up call. And one thing I like about that is there's ambiguity. There's a question. It could mean either of those, or both, or something else altogether. And that makes me wonder what you think makes good political art or effective political art.
Oh, that's thank you. First, thank you, because like that is pretty much both of those things are something that I'm kind of hoping for in relation to like communicating my ideas to somebody else. So I'm glad that both of those things are coming across. What makes good political art? I mean, that is a question, isn't it? I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, I do, as I said before, I feel like it's super important. The more actually interactive and activist things other people are doing, like I'm friends with a lot of other artists, and one of them is named Michelle Pred, and she's a sculptor originally, but she's also kind of a performance artist, and she's gotten heavily into social practices, and she's been doing all of this work with the with, well, first contraception and now the abortion issue, and the legislation and all of that. And she, she's an example of someone who just goes out there and really like interacts with people and makes, I don't know, I mean, I suppose making change, or at least involving a lot of other people in her art practice. And I'm kind of I'm Scorpio rising. Like, I'm a little bit of a reclusive, like I'm like to be in my studio, and I hope that the little distress calls that I'm sending out are doing
registering somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. But like, I can't be as sure as she probably can. I mean,
Right.
it's so I think both.
Well, we need all personalities in all approaches.
Right.
The world would be a very boring place if everybody was out doing a performance art in the street.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think there's a place for all of it. And,
for sure.
And I also think that art is something that everybody can do. And also political thought is something that everybody can do. Like, you kind of, I mean, I'm sure you can try to be not engaged, but I think it would be really hard to be completely disengaged, because everything about the way we're living now is affected by what's going on.
Yeah.
From your choices in the grocery store to what kind of
what's
car
not
you
political.
drive, whatever, what's not political, right? So, I think it's like, what is art and what is political and what is just people living their lives is like a bit of a blurry line.
Yeah. Well, and I like
point.
that idea that being aware of who you are and how you show up in the world is a big part of that answer of how you engage with political issues. It's not a, if you care about these things, this is what you have to do. It's like, you care about these things, and this is who you are, and this is what your personality is. And so, we need all the types.
Yeah, we do, and we've got them all. Like, it's not, there's no lack of types. But I think my like, if there is one big message, it's to pay attention and just do what you can, even if that's just like turning a thought over in your mind about how things are, and maybe how they could be improved, or how they can't be improved, or how it's not too late, or how it is too late, or whatever your thoughts are on that situation. Yeah.
And you've had your work displayed on billboards throughout Los Angeles. I think it was Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm, it was.
Can you tell me how that project came about, and how you think about the impact you might have had on viewers who are sitting there in their cars on the highway?
Yeah, I love that question, because it was a bit of an accident. So there is this great program, which now I'm going to forget the name of it. The Billboard Collective, I believe, is what it's called. And they solicit applications from artists. I think it's every year, to have your work displayed on these billboards. Like, it's a nonprofit, and they have the funds to like buy the space on these billboards for artists to use. And then it just happened that the juror one year, I didn't apply. I had applied in the past and not been selected, and I didn't apply this particular year. But Chris Vroom, who is a philanthropist and art supporter, and who founded Artadia, which is this wonderful grant-giving organization that I got a grant from way back in 2001. Anyway, so he was the juror, and he was able to like invite a couple of artists who hadn't applied. And so I'm one of the people he invited to ask
cool.
if I wanted to do one. And so I said, well, yes, of course. And so then I got to have that image with the green sea turtle on this billboard, really, huge. It's like, I don't know, like 12 by 24 feet or something. And it was on, no, I'm forgetting. It was, it's not Santa Monica, West LA somewhere. Anyway, that was great. But I don't really know what the impact was. Like, I didn't actually get that much feedback. I got feedback from a few friends who saw it. Like they saw it either knowing about it or they were sitting in traffic and saw it and took a picture and they're like, hey, it's your painting.
Look.
But I don't really know what the impact of that was.
But that's kind of like, that's what a lot of art is. You know, you have to put it out there in the world, and you would love to have data on what reactions are, but you often don't.
No. Yes. And they tend to be political, like not all of it, but like a lot of the art that they put up there tends to have some kind of message to it. And I think it's great because it definitely doesn't look like the other billboards that you would be seeing around there.
Which helps you notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have here in my notes the billboard creative. Is that right?
That's good. That could be right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. Well, do you have stories about the impact of your work on people that you have encountered, that you think about?
Yeah. Probably a lot. Mostly good, especially with this animal series. You know, like I did have some stranger reactions with previous series of paintings that I was doing, but I think probably my favorite, and again, I'm going to go back to Recology. So these paintings are very child friendly. And I think some of my best reactions have actually come from kids because they don't edit. They just kind of like say things.
Yep.
And they get very attracted and interested in the color and all that other stuff, but also especially the animals and talking about why they're there. So I'll say just in terms of like engaged conversation that actually goes somewhere significant, it actually like increases when the age of the viewer is younger. Not that adults don't have thoughts in their heads, but they're not as free to express what they're thinking. Yeah.
To absorb.
Yeah, exactly. And so at Recology, they give tours to school groups. And so I would have groups of like, 20 like little kids.
Third graders.
looking at the work. So I think that's some of my favorite interactions that I've had.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah. And you don't know, like that experience early on can have profound impacts on people's lives. I think about that. I did a trip in 7th grade where I learned about some environmental things. And I credit that one trip to my entire career built around environmental thinking.
Oh, wow. Where did you go?
Chincoteague Island. Barrier Island off the coast of Virginia, Maryland.
Right.
Yeah, so I learned about the collapse of bird species, which I later learned with, that was the work Rachel Carson was doing. And that it hit me really hard. Just this idea that these chemicals we're putting into the environment that are like decimating populations of birds who don't know any better and can't do anything about it because they eat fish and it kills them. So that had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's why Recology brings the school groups through,
right?
Because then they give them a little demonstration about recycling, and you see whatever artists' work is being produced and all of that. So that it gets in there at an early stage, I think is a good thing.
Super important. Get them while they're young. Well, what have you learned from this work? And how have you changed your view of our general ecological predicament and what you think we need to do to confront it?
Okay, so my mind is continually blown by the extent of the issue, and I'll just focus on the animals for right now. And again, I think the animals, it's true that this is happening, this sort of rapid rate of species loss, and that is kind of happening because all of these other environmental forces are put in play, like the carbon in the atmosphere and whatever, all of the things that everyone probably already knows about. But the scope of it, like the scale of it, continually surprises me. Like I did a series in 2020. I think I finished in 2021, and they were it was a series of small paintings addressing the 7 deadly sins. And so there was one sin for each painting, and I wanted to include an endangered animal that made sense with the particular sin in question. And so I was looking things up that I didn't even think. I was like, are there any pigs that are endangered? Because I wanted to use a pig for my gluttony painting. And it's like, Yeah, there are, like every single
Yep,
kind of animal, even
yep.
ones where you're like, that can't be, like, no way that there's like an endangered goat. Yeah, there are.
Yep.
Like every time, you don't have to scratch very far. And the more that you do scratch, like the more alarmed you get, because you realize it just hits you harder the harder that you look for this problem. Because when I go outside, probably a good and bad thing about San Francisco is it's so beautiful here.
Yeah.
I go outside and there's like birds and it's been really sunny, and it's really hard to feel too alarmed about anything. Like you're like, this is fantastic, there's nothing wrong. But then you start reading about it and you realize like that is kind of, it's like yes, but also no at the same time. And so I think that's the lesson that I keep learning it over and over. Like every time I do research to choose an animal, it just kind of hits you again and again. So for me, I think that's the bigger. It shouldn't keep being surprising, but it actually is continually surprising.
Well, and that gives you also insight in terms of what's going on when you're talking about like pigs and goats. Those are domesticated animals in the first place. But the nature of our modern agricultural system is we pick the one thing that's the most productive and that makes it easiest to mass produce. And everything else we get rid of because they don't make as much money.
Right.
And so you can even have varieties of domesticated plants and animals that are disappearing because they're not as efficient or as profitable as others.
Yeah, or the wild versions of those things are disappearing more precisely, like in the case of the pigs. And the same is true of like food. I mean, plants. Other things as well. And in fact, I haven't really addressed plants at all. But that's not because I'm not aware that it's the same issue. I just haven't. I haven't gone there yet in my paintings.
Is that coming?
I don't know. Maybe there are other people. I can't think of people's names right now, but I think there are some other people out there who have been making paintings with endangered plant species in them, because it's pretty much the exact same thing. It's just that, like, again, I think that animals, they're kind of more charismatic in the painting. It's easier for people to see that, like, maybe that was chosen for a specific reason. Again, back to the Richard Powers, like that's something I like about his book, because he made the trees like an animated character in the book, and was able to talk about species loss and all kinds of things with the trees. So I think that's really also an interesting area to think about.
Well, Cara, I love the work. The paintings are absolutely stunning, and I'm really hoping to see them in person one day. Thank you so much for bringing these paintings into the world, and thanks for all your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Thank you so much to Cara Maria. Go to our website at chrysalispodcast.org, where you can see images of her paintings, learn about Cara's upcoming shows, and check out our book and media recommendations. This episode was researched by Lydia Montgomery and edited by Sarah Westridge, with additional editing by Isabella Nert, Amy Kavanaugh, Arthur Koenig, Kate Fair, and Marta Kondratug. Music is by Danielle Rodriguez Vivas. Mixing is by Morgan Honecker. If you enjoyed my conversation with Cara, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Contact me anytime at chrysalispodcast.org, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter and support us with a donation.